Hello, and welcome to the Weekly Scroll Podcast. My name is Ryan.
And I became a vampire to suck blood and make love forever.
And today we have a very special guest with us once again. This is Zach from SoulMuppet Publishing. How you doing today, Zach?
How you doing, both? Yeah, having a really good one.
Good. Welcome back for time number your third run on the Weekly Scroll.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me here to talk about sad gay vampires.
Yeah. We're definitely going to talk about sad gay vampires. We'll touch on some other stuff before too, because for those that might not know, you or SoulMuppet Publishing, like who the heck are you? What might other people know you for?
Oh yeah, so SoulMuppet is a UK-based indie RPG company. My name is Zach. I go by Jelly Muppet on most of social medias, and we make role-playing games. We have made stuff like Orbital Blues, which is about sad space cowboys. We've made Best Left Buried, which was on the show pretty recently, which is our like professional dungeoneering horror game. We did Inevitable last year, and now we're here for like our fourth big title coming out of Soul Muppet, which is Paint the Town Red, which is a game about being dead inside. I've been like making RPGs now for like 6 years. Yeah, I found this out recently. Best Left Buried is 6 years and 1 week old, which is kind of mad. I feel like there's going to be a point where, you know, in a couple years it will be. I mean, it's already at junior school. I guess I don't know what preschool you'd probably call it in the U. I don't know what your US version of it is, but yeah, my Anglophone way, he's in the Best Left Buried is in year 2 or 3 now, I think. So probably like first grade, maybe. I don't know.
That's crazy because Best Left Buried was pre-COVID. It's so interesting that like there's a massive indie scene prior to COVID, but like 2020 on, like how much has actually come out after that. But Best Left Buried was prior to COVID.
Yeah. We did the relaunch remaster in 2020, which is how long ago that was. So I've been making RPGs for a while now. Not as long as some people, but for someone my age, I think I've been making RPGs for quite long.
Yeah, I don't know how I forgot Inevitable, considering we talked about it right before the show started, but I don't remember if we did have a chat about Inevitable. I'll have to write that list down, but I did write a list of all the stuff for Soul Muppet, so you guys can all catch up. Back on episode 15. Episode 15. I think this is episode like 175. We did an Orbital Blues review. Mm-hmm. We did Best Left Buried on number 26. So we've been a fans of you guys pretty much like, I mean, obviously since before we started the show. We had you on episode 25. We did a review of Gangs of Titan City on episode 86. We had you on episode 112 to talk about Orbital Blues Afterburn. We did an Orbital Blues side quest, which is a side quest episode 4. We did a Best Left Buried side quest, which is number 9. And I think we did have an Inevitable episode. So I think we are like 9 episodes in talking about you guys. So if anyone that watches the show gives a shit about our opinion, we're fans, and you should buy everything from Soul Muppet. Especially, I love Best Left Buried, but you know, obviously everything is great. Orbital Blues, I think we've covered more than anything, but a lot of fantastic stuff from you guys. But today we're talking about, as you said, sad gay vampires. So why are we talking about sad gay vampires today?
Well, I wrote a game called Paint the Town Red. It's on BackerKit right now. It features as my main collaborator and art director on it, Johan Noor of Morkborg, Cyborg, and Into the Odd fame. So I wanted to make a game that used some of the same mechanics and was exploring some of the same spaces we did in Orbital Blues to kind of write my take on the vampire game. Something that was like emotional and sad and at times like weird and horny and like going through and sort of telling the stories of these vampires. And yeah, the game's live now on BackerKit. You can pledge. There's a load of silly, fantastic bits you can do. The game is set like on the history throughout the history of Earth as your vampires like stretch into immortality. There's a whole load of adventures that are available as part of it, and then like dice and silly books and things, as well as like one incredibly gorgeous book that will be right at the center of it. And also, if that any of this sounds interesting, and as we are talking, I would recommend checking out our Quick Start, which is, I have a physical copy, but it is available for free digitally on the SoulMuppet website. And you owe it to yourself to go and check that out if you are listening to this at home. It's a really cool book. I mean, I'm allowed to say it's a cool book, right? I like it quite a lot. But yeah, that's what that is.
Yeah, it looks really good. I'm very in my vampire year right now, I think. So I'm very stoked about this. Also, I love the man eater dice kit. They're some of the prettiest dice that I have ever seen.
Yeah, so we're working with a really fantastic guy called Miles Garstang from a company called Rune Fable, which is again like a UK-based dice manufacturer, former chemist, and has made these dice for us that are like sharp shard-like resin crystals with blood drops running through the resin and also a liquid blood core. Like when you shake and roll the dice, the blood is kicked up as you roll. So not only do the pictures look gorgeous, but also when they roll in motion, they look even better. So I'd love to show you on my camera, but they are in another room right now, and my camera quality is not studio quality, I'm afraid. But yeah, there's some really gorgeous dice as a part of there. But, you know, we wanted to like use the dice. When you work with someone like Miles, who has like a real understanding and mastery of the craft of dice making and thus chemistry, and has made all of these other dice for lots of other cool companies, we were literally able to mimic the emotional cycles of the characters in the game with dice, which is pretty fantastic because the game is about like the experiences of moving between many emotional states, because we're using undeath here and being a vampire and having survived death as a metaphor for being a survivor of trauma, and thus the characters are dealing with stuff like anxiety and depression and, you know, problems with their mental health, and also their queerness fundamentally, right? So these characters are moving through all these emotional states constantly. In Orbital Blues, we joke about the game having sad for XP. The blues mechanic that exists allows you to level up by expressing the emotional core of your troubles and telling us more about your sad cowboy backstory. Whereas in Paint the Town Red, you're in fact doing sad for health, right? Your health score, your pulse, is a mimicry and reflection of your emotional state in a given moment. So are you like, is your skin flush? Is your heart beating? Do you look and act like a human and blend in with normal society because you're having a good enough time? Or are you this monstrous creature, pale, pallid, curled up in a ball that is like refusing to interact with the world? And then also there's this other spectrum that you interact with, which is measuring your chaos, which is like how active you are feeling in a given moment and how your emotional state is affecting the people around you, right? And the city around you that you're in. And sort of that, how people around you are going to react to you. And by measuring those two numbers together, you're reflecting all these different emotional states. And literally the idea that like, when you roll this dice, it moves from a state of low pulse, low chaos to high pulse, high chaos is like something that is really fundamentally cool from a pleasure level. So yeah, the dice, like everything I do, is a metaphor for something.
That's beautiful. I love that.
I mean, you guys have I think at least twice have gone kind of nutty with the dice, because then Inevitable had the bullet dice.
Yeah. Bullet dice, yeah. That was fun. I went to, again, one of the best dice manufacturers in the world, Level Up Dice, and said, give me a dice with which I could kill a dragon. And they did so, so, I mean, that time it was, CNC cutting pieces of brass into the shape of a hexagonal bullet. And this time it was filling resin dice with liquid capsules full of blood. and that's the things I do for people being able to do cool things on the crowdfunding project. Because, like, as with most, you know, indie creations that exist like mine, this thing happened because I got excited about an idea and decided to do it. And the fact that you can buy it is only really an accidental, like, side effect of my personal enthusiasm. So, you know, it just means that some cool thing is made so that I can keep one or two of them at the end is like the general Soul Muppet strategy.
I think we all appreciate that you do that, actually, because we also want those things. So,
absolutely. I mean, if I was ever the publishing stuff or making games, that's literally what I would do. I'd be like, I'm doing this literally just for me. You guys might get it too, but as long as I can make at least one, I'll be happy with it on my shelf. So I think as long as you, being, at least in our opinion, a very cool, creative person, enjoys what you're making, then we will continue to enjoy receiving that. So if you're happy at the end of the day, you know, we've been happy every time. So continue to look forward to that. So your core system, as you were just saying, with Paint the Town Red, is the same you used with Best Left Buried, is the same you used with Orbital Blues. That's kind of like the house system as far as Soul Muppet goes, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Keeping it nice and simple, rolling 2 dice, trying to hit a target number, 3 stats. The amount of numbers that I think a person can generally remember off the top of their head on a character sheet. For this, we've got about 5, I think. 6 if you count these sort of baked-in experience mechanic. But there's really, like, not a lot happening in this game because it's like, ultimately, while I want games to have rules and I think that they are helpful to govern what happens at the table, I don't want to have you, you know, we joked with Best Left Buried, you can't be scared if you're doing maths, right? That is like, there's certainly some types of maths that can be scary, but I don't want that to be the experience as the game is intended, which is why, like, I just keep everything really simple so that the rules can get out the way of the game happening. And, you know, we've gone in a different direction each time with what we've chosen to add to this game, to kind of work out what we think the game needs on top of the core engine. With Best Left Buried, that was a really comprehensive set of character and monster abilities that could be used to basically, like, kit bash from whatever sources together whatever fantasy monster you needed, right? Because that's what we thought the game needed in that genre to make sense. In Orbital Blues, there's lots of stuff about spaceships and spaceship combat and crew equipment, and kind of that's the place we think the game needed the additional complexity. Whereas for Paint the Town Red, the direction that we've gone in is we've been focusing on, like, tools and GM's advice, because the game I wanted to tell is not a game about going into a dungeon and getting some treasure or trying to save the princess or engaging with the stories of either a fantasy novel or a Western sci-fi thing, respectively, in the way that those two games were. Because this is a game about, like, it's much more slice of life. It's much more like day-to-day emotional. The main drive of the characters isn't to get money or to level up or do a job. It's not about getting paid. It's about, like, finding something else. You're kind of climbing this Maslowian pyramid of, you know, satisfaction and looking for emotional fulfillment. And at the start of the game, that is to do with drinking people alive and indulging in your passions and going out and painting the town red. And then by the end of it, that cycle is either going to cause all these massive consequences to come back and clap you and push you into overdrive, or you're going to start forging bonds, making connections with the community, and, like, pushing on to that next dimension of play. So a lot of the tools were less about, like, hero saves the princess or tries to kill the dragon, and more about adding you these emotional tools to, like, sometimes make this feel more like an episode of Always Sunny in Philadelphia or something like that, rather than, like, these sort of high fantastical stories involving the hero's journey. you know. So we're giving you lots of pacing tools to like handle what characters are doing between sessions, like these sort of like intro pastiche pieces that kind of connect the sessions together, all of the sort of mechanics of all these different people in the cities, because like the game is about being part of an undead community, right? It's about creating this nightlife, pun intended, of all of these other emotionally strained undead people, right? Who are interacting you in their own way and all have their own wants and desires and are also like weird and interesting vampires from throughout history with their own passions, looking for their own needs. And also then interacting with this other force, which are the more cold and uncaring, immortal, hegemonic vampires that have spent their time like building society in an image that works for them rather than like drinking blood and trying to fall in love, you know? So it really, while it's got like the same engine, we keep it simple. You'll like recognize the resolution mechanic if you've played either of those two popular Soul Muppet games. Or something like Maze Rats, for example, which uses a similar engine. You'll definitely like, if you sit down and read the rest of the game, you'll see there's a bunch of other stuff that's trying to push it in this different direction. So yeah.
One thing I really like is, and to that point, is even like the stat names in this, which you did obviously wonderful in Orbit Blues. We love those, but the 3 stats in Paint the Town Red: Savagery, Allure, and Duplicity. Hitting hard on the vibes, even down in the stat names. And as you read the rest of the book too, I mean, one thing that I was drawn to, so I'm just on the quick start page. In the fighting section, fighting options like eat some fucker alive and get the shit beat out of you. Yeah. So the writing in this is, top notch. What kind of, I guess, awesome, and just talk to that, I guess, a little bit.
Yeah. It was really important to me that like each of the games that we wrote have a very like different tone to them, and like adopting and sitting in that tone is really important. Best Left Buried feels very it feels a bit like Darkest Dungeon. It's very evocative. It's very like interested in these long monologues that are told by like a weary old man around a campfire about all the dungeoneering he used to do, right? The game has a voice. It speaks to you in the flavor section. In something like Orbital Blues, Sam worked really well in like giving all of the game this attitude of this cowboy who had this contempt for capitalism, and like the way this all sits around and the language fit there. Whereas Inevitable, you're kind of talking as if it is a story. It feels like something that comes out of a Western or Arthurian legend or something like that. Whereas in this game, the tone is much less baroque and at times much more casual. There's swearing in this book, quite a lot. You get the shit out of you eat some fucker alive, and establishing like a language that I can use to talk about each game is like a really important step. And it occurs organically. Like when you start writing the game, the tone isn't always clear to you. And often I like go back and go, oh, this isn't like funny or sad or written enough. It's like an inconsistent voice to it. And I think this is like the game that is closest to how I talk in real life, because I am not a cowboy. I am a mild-mannered British person who may be also very old, very sad, and reasonably gay. And the voice there is good. Like it kind of all starts from the earliest bits. Like, and my favorite bit, I don't know if you caught this, of the stats. We have Savagery, Allure, and Duplicity. Savagery covers your like acts of physical violence, and that leads very different to like brawn or muscle, right? Because it's not about that. It's about being savage, right? It speaks in a really different language. Instead of your wit or your savvy, we're in the realm of duplicity now, right? Which speaks very differently there. And Allure is its own, like, this is about like feats of charm and being sort of like suggestive and sexy at times. But the game another fun thing is the game used to have ferocity instead of savagery, and then we changed ferocity to savagery purely because of the reason that the stats now spell sad.
I think savagery hits better though as well. You know,
it does. Yeah, no, that was very good, and it was my friend Ben McCaffison that who's one of a sort of poet and comedian in the Nottingham scene. It was like, you need to replace that to do this, and that was like the best piece of playtesting feedback I've ever had. Like, you need to do this so the pun is better. Is like the kind of playtesting feedback you don't normally get. But yeah, ferocity and savagery both would have worked, but I love savagery and how that game feels. And yeah, the game spends a lot of time talking to you in these periods of like demarked, italicized flavor tellers about the city or the culture or the vampires or what undeath is and what you're doing, sort of, and it injects a lot of flavor through that way because we didn't have access to a lot of the diegetic art that Orbital Blues uses, right? A lot of the art in Orbital Blues is like a poster or something from the universe, right? That we pulled in, and Josh Clark, our amazing illustrator, and Sam Salini, our fantastic writer, kind of worked together to, and also Lone Archivist, our graphic designer, and later Dai Shugars, who's done all the stuff for Afterburn, worked to like bring all of these things to artifacts that exist on the page. Whereas when we were working with Johan, it was quite clear from him that he wanted the book to look and feel a different way, right? And was uninterested in diegetic art as a concept because that's something that appears very heavily in lots of other types of vampiric media, right? If you look at a Vampire the Masquerade piece, right, there is a lot of torn up little in-world notes and letters or diaries that are written from the perspective of a character. And if you look at sort of more modern RPGs, A Thousand Year Old Vampire like is firmly rooted in that kind of collage style. So when we took our swing at this genre, understanding and respecting those things that came before us, having looked at them and decided what we liked about them and what we didn't, wanting to and the other one in the vampire genre is Eat the Reich as well. Like a load of that is in world, right? You're handed an intelligence document. Mm-hmm. And that obviously was an influence for this game and how it looks and plays. And yeah, the art in Paint the Town Red, when you see it, is like not in world. It's more frequently like kit bashed and cannibalized and feasted upon versions of art from the public domain that we have like ripped up and added blood splatters to, or murky shadows or skeletons or whatever. And Johan's like done a bunch of that art that you'll be able to see on the page, but also we've worked with a really wide selection of utterly fantastic artists to create bits of art that are, some of them are about vampires, but also some of them are like really firmly nested in the periods of time that we set the adventures in, because these adventures are about place and culture and like the cities that we all live in, right? Being a place where these adventures, these characters happen, right? And that's where all of these adventures start, with like one of the coolest cities that we could think of when we were coming up with the adventure and work out what are the vampires up to this time, because they're everywhere, they're all throughout history, and they never die. So there were some really exciting choices about the adventures there.
Yeah. The so sad, the savagery. It's funny when you started that and you said ferocity, I was like, oh, savage just sounds better. I also feel like colloquially people say savage a bunch now for like things that fit. I was not expecting you to say sad, and I can't tell you how much that's going to tickle me literally for the rest of my life, that the stats in this spell sad, and it's a sad game. So that I'm gonna love that for forever. As far as, so I've been flipping through the quick start on screen, and as far as like the layout, the art and stuff like that, is this mostly what the book is going to look like? Is there a big difference, or is this mostly like just a truncated version for the quick start?
Oh, we are going to redo it because of various reasons. A bunch of the art that is currently just public domain art that is vampire themed is going to be messed up by Johan and some other artists as we work through. And there's going to be more art that we're adding to it. There's a ludicrous quantity of art. I've bought far too much for the final game. And we're going to be resizing it from, instead of being the A5 quick start, it's going to go to that you could print on a computer thing at home. It's going to go to the standard 6x9-inch SoulMuppet size that is more familiar to some Americans as US trade. But then there's also going to be huge swaths of other stuff that gets added to the rest of the adventure. The quick start currently is like feature complete, right? It's a done game. I am an idiot. I made a far too big quick start. It's 82 pages long. It has full character creation, rules for running a whole campaign, and an adventure that will do you minimum for like 3 to 5 sessions, if not more, but you could play it for longer if you wanted. So like, don't quick start does not mean one shot. This is a campaign of the game set in our starter adventure, a modern Babylon, which is in Victorian London, right? And it gives you all the characters, all the vampires and stuff that you need. But when we're scaling up to the full book, which is on Kickstarter now, that is just adding enormous quantities of new things. There's going to be 3 adventures in it that are set in ancient Rome, Charlemagne's Aachen, and then Ghazni in the 11th century in modern-day Afghanistan, kind of as we move east, as we move through time, fleeing the ruins of ancient Rome and kind of the impact that had on Europe. There's also going to be a bunch of rules for playing other types of undead instead of just vampires, because the stories include, like the adventures include ghosts, werewolves, ghouls, liches, zombies, skeletons, and I've forgotten one, which I'll remember some other time. And so there's rules for those, and there's also going to be advice on making your own adventures, advice on running this like different style of more reactive game, pacing tools for lengthening out the campaign from something that is played in one city to like measured across the entirety of time. So there's these rules for like what happens in the 600 years between your adventures, right? Working out what occurs there and how your characters might change. And then I got excited and wrote a lore chapter, which is a 7,000 word in-world academic article written by a fictional parapsychologist who is reviewing for an academic journal the movement of the undead throughout history and talking a bunch about like undead culture, and doing that by conducting interviews with 3 key vampires she found that are very old. And like, what were they doing this time? What were they doing this time? How does vampiric culture change? And like, what could all these adventures look like? And thus seeding all these other adventures. So, and there's a load of other stuff as well to do with like magic, and there's loads of rules for being a wizard or a lich or whatever. That's the one I forgot, liches. And then tables of random characters, names, locations, and then there's a load more stuff we're doing as well. There's going to be at least 2 other adventures, as well as the 1 in the quick start, 3 in the core book. We've got 1 set in New York in the 1920s, which is called It Never Sleeps, which like catalogs the Great Depression. If that sounds interesting to you, there's an actual play of it on My First Dungeon you can listen to. We've partnered up with them and sponsored a stream for them to do like a 4-episode season, show you what like a standard city could look like if it was played by amazing players and edited into essentially functionally an audio drama. I'm in audio drama production now somehow. Who knows? And then also another adventure set in 1880s Imperial Japan in Edo, now Tokyo. So like there is a lot of stuff in this book. So it's going to look like the quick start. The graphic design is going to be vaulted in the same things. You're still going to have these pieces of art that are often drawn from the public domain, sometimes new. The blood pouring from the gutters is like a really big feature that's sticking around. You can kind of tell where you're on a chapter by how chaotic the book is. Once again, we make something a metaphor for what it is to be a vampire. And blood pours from the gutters as it gets advanced. But also, there's going to be more of it. The art's going to be cooler, and all the other shit's going to be added. So it's going to be one heck of a game when it gets finished, especially when I spend time talking about all those things that have taken months and months and months of my writing time to kind of make exist in the way they are.
Yeah, you spent a little bit of time on this, 7,000 words just for a lore chapter. Flipping through the quick start, I fucking love.
I got excited, Ryan. I got excited. Like,
How dare
it was
you?
gonna be short, and then I just kept going.
Have you ever not added like a third extra to your games just from the excitement of doing them?
I mean, no, not really.
Yeah.
Like,
There you go.
Afterburn has ended up like 50% more page count than we intended. I think Inevitable was pretty close to the spec I was imagining, but also there was still lots of weird little bits in there that weren't planned at the start because, but like all creative activities, when they go well, are an exercise in enthusiasm, right? And you wouldn't want to read something that the person who written it had not enjoyed doing,
Right.
That's, I think, pretty fundamental. So yeah, I had fun, I got excited, and now there's going to be one hell of a book that everyone's going to get to play at the end with also content from some amazing guest and collaborative writers that we've worked with on the book. There's like a huge team of like 24 people that we've worked on the quick start and then the accompanying materials and the core book and the other bits you can get. So there's a lot of people working on this.
Yeah. I mean, so with Inevitable too, though, I mean, Inevitable is the game that, if I remember correctly when we chatted before, that you kind of had spent the most time in your mind about. It's like the game that you always wanted to make. So like, it kind of makes sense that you had what you wanted to do kind of in your head since you've been thinking about it a lot longer. But then also, yeah, that the team list, I'm scrolling through on BackerKit right now. I mean, the names on here are crazy. Even when you just get down to the writing team, Hippolyta, Elliot Davidson, Brian Flaherty. Obviously, you said you partnered up with the My First Dungeon people, but the art team, like Brendan Yu, Brian Yaksha. I mean, this is like a fraction of the list of people here. It's crazy the team that you put together for this.
Yeah, I'm very proud of them, very happy to work with all of them, and I hope I will be again soon. And as we continue to finish this thing, because like, while some of these writers have like finished up, like all the adventures have been written, but there's a lot of art left to go. So that's going to be very exciting to get all of that done and finished. And yeah, it's been a joy to work on, particularly because like there are some people on here that I've been wanting to collaborate with as artists and for ages. Like I've been trying to get Johan to work with me for literally 5 projects now. Every time I'm like, are you busy for this thing? And I was like, well, this time, this is the one I really want you to do. But yeah, it was really cool to write something with Brian and Elliot. Like, I think it's very interesting, like from working with an actual play on like a partnership that is also something that's going to get turned into a book is really cool. Like you can listen to that adventure as it is played and get sort of like a grounding in what those characters are like as you read it. I've been wanting to work on something big with Hippolyta again since we did Cantrip together. That was like 3 years ago now. We've done a couple like little stretch goal bits. They did something as part of Inevitable, but it's good to get them back to like her back to write a whole thing. So it's great. And I'm even more excited to hit some of the stretch goals that we've got planned. The one I really want to do is called the Cold War, which is like Cold War vampire spies going after each other, with a bunch of stuff about the sort of imperialism and colonialism of the superpowers of that period, interacting with all these different cities and parts of the world. And, but because the adventures are so like fun to write for this game, like ultimately an adventure is a city that is like an exciting place to work in, that you can pull bits of history and, spend so long reading books or on Wikipedia or watching YouTube videos or however you want to do your research. And like finding about something going, oh, well, that sounds like a vampire lives there. This guy sounds like a vampire. This character I want to kit bash, combine with this thing. And like, most of the adventures is just places and characters that you kind of have all these things they want and they need and these passions that you kind of smush together. And that then turns into an adventure. And writing 24 interesting characters is really easy and fun, especially because the characters in an adventure set in ancient Rome aren't just going to be Roman, right? They're actually going to be, you know, Greek or Egyptian or Babylonian or from Sumer or from, you know, Turkey or Gaul or, you know, any place, any time that's previous. You can say, well, this person who is from this place and is into this thing is now here. What are they doing now? Where do they fit in? And the energy of the contacts have is they're kind of like these emotionally damaged, interesting people like you who come from, who have this high concept, but also these like emotional needs, right? And being able to do that and getting them to pulling those people out of the idea of what is exciting about history is really cool. It's been fun to write a game that is like set and grounded very firmly in the real world, right? Or a real world, right? Not the real world per se.
It's not a medieval fantasy world. It is a version of our.
Yeah, it's absolutely, yeah.
On that note, the do you have media touchstones that you were thinking of when you were writing a lot of this? I know obviously like from games perspective, we talked about that, you know, Vampire, Eat the Reich, Vampire the Masquerade and things like that. But were you reading a lot of Anne Rice when you were doing this, or like was there other things on your mind?
I haven't read any Anne Rice. I've watched some bits of the TV show. I need to finish it, but I don't have the TV platform it's on in the UK, so I'm having to pirate it, and I'm lazy. But that's amazing. The stuff that's really been getting me going for it is like a concoction of all the normal stuff that tends to influence me, which is like really loud and obnoxious jazz and Disco Elysium are like the two touchstones for anything I will make ever. But specifically kind of hitting the vampire specific touchstones, I'd say I'm now all media has just drifted out of my skull. What We Do in the Shadows is a classic. That like messy, disastrous live-in housemate polycule of both the film and the TV show. I've seen more of the film than I have the TV show. I've not finished it yet. And that's like a real touchstone for how like messy and disastrous these characters can be, but while also being fundamentally very sad. Only Lovers Left Alive is like a big reference point. I feel like they are the most paint the town red vampires I've seen in fiction. Midnight Mass is really fucking cool. I love that show. And there's loads of other bits and bobs, but there's also like lots of bits of media that you wouldn't necessarily associate with undeath that is like that feels very paint the town red, right? There's stuff like In Bruges and Leaving Las Vegas both really like speak to me as paint the town red stories, because like they are about death and regret and, you know, alcoholism at times and like purgatory, right? Some post-death state we find ourselves in where something very bad has happened and we're now trying to deal with it emotionally, or not deal with it in some cases. But yeah, there's lots and lots of touchstones. I'm sure I've missed a load off, but like, yeah, those are some of the big hitters. But I don't think you could go wrong starting a certain like interview with a vampire.
Yeah, I'm shocked you haven't read that, because like the love triangle between like Louis and Lestat and Claudia, like they're very sad and like very gay, and like as soon as I heard of this, I was like, oh, this is Louis and Lestat, like this is the whole thing. I'm shocked that that's not something you've read.
The problem is that I don't read much anymore because it feels like working. I have a lot of ADHD, so if I'm reading something, it's for work, and I need to get an audiobook and blast through it. But also, like, one of these things is that when you look at a series that was like written 20 or 30 years ago, and God knows how many interviews there are in that the books in that series now, like I've always feel intimidated by big ones. Like in my head, there's at least like 6 or something.
I think there's like 9 or 10 at this point.
9? That's just 9 or 10 books. Just 9
or 10. It's fine. I feel like Only Lovers Left Alive is an amazing touch point for this. I completely forgot about that film. I watched it years ago. That's a great, like, sad musician vampire film. And if you have not watched it, listeners, you should. It's great.
I've never even heard of this.
Oh, really? Yeah, it's Tilda Swinton and Tom, whatever his last name.
Hiddleston?
Hiddleston.
John Hurt in it as well.
Mm. Oh yeah, he is.
I'll definitely.
R.I.P.
I mean, that's on my list now. I'll have to check it out.
Oh yeah.
I never even knew that existed, much less had a chance to watch it. So
If you enjoy sad
Backer Kit,
vampires, I'd definitely give it a listen.
Yeah, it's a
I mean,
great sad vampire film.
who's making happy vampires, because they don't understand how it. I mean, we get 100 years, and that's, you know, at max, and that's enough for me. I can't imagine doing it for a couple hundred and not being sad about it. You know. So the project's on Backer Kit right now. What can we get when we go back the Backer Kit, if we haven't already, which obviously we have? What can people get from this project physically in hand?
Yeah. So there's the core book, which we talked about, as well as PDFs of that, and also the free quick start is available now and is like the number one thing I suggest you do. Don't read the Kickstarter page. You can read the Backit page if you want. Obviously, it's designed to tell you what's going on. But go to the SoulMuppet website, download the quick start. That's where you should start. There are a bunch of the adventures are being displayed in like adventure envelopes, which is basically like a fancy map written by our in-world vampire cartographer Aloysius Rex, and also Tom McCready, who is our real-life cartographer. There's a series of maps for each adventure, which are then combined with all of these different like cards and pamphlets, which allow you to put, basically it's an adventure in a bag, which is a useful thing to carry around. So you grab a couple of those. There are then 2 dice sets, which are available. One, which is just D6s if you're a player. There's a fancy GM set you can buy if you want a full polyhedral set. You can get by with just the D6s, but I feel if I didn't sell a polyhedral set, people would be coming at me with knives. And then also the final and like the highest pledge level we have is this thing called the Undying Edition, which is a copy of the book, which is bound in leather and has a bunch of gemstones on it, and is basically like a handmade by an artisan bookbinder in the UK to be the fanciest possible version of Paint the Town Red available. But they are, of course, very expensive because they are hand-bound by a person in the UK to be the most beautiful version of Paint the Town Red available.
Yeah. So 2 questions. One, because I know you have a physical quick start in your hand. Does the physical quick start come with physical pledges, or is it just a PDF?
Well, it's just a PDF, because like ultimately this is like a starter book, and I want you to have the whole thing if you're going to play, because it's only going to be like about 220 pages is our projected value at the moment. So you can get that digitally. We might make it available in physical in the future, but like I'd really rather you just buy the full thing that's in the version that we intended. This is mainly just like a little convention exclusive that we're using to advertise the thing.
I mean, but for us with problems,
to get online,
you know, for us that have an issue not having every possible thing of a thing, if it were to be available, that would be cool. Because I need to.
I'll see what we can do. Maybe there's an add-on level or something we could make. Yeah, cool. That's a good idea.
So I have the tiers up on the screen right now. If I wanted everything, including like the GM set and the player set, would that be like the 150 creature of the night, or would you want to go all the way up to like the life of the party whole shebang there?
So if you got both sets of dice, that would be in at the, oh my god, you're now testing my brain. I think that comes in at the 200 mark, but I can't remember. The page is more accurate than me. You definitely don't need both sets of dice. The one that I'd go in at if I was backing this at home is the 60 quid one that's just got the adventure and the 2 sets of envelopes. But you can't go wrong with some fancy dice.
You really can't.
I mean, the dice are insanely beautiful.
Yeah.
I mean, like the blood
dice.
liquid core. Yeah. And you guys are at like just a couple hundred from funded. You're 24,755 of a $25,000 goal. You got more than 2 weeks left, so there's plenty of time to get to stretch goals and things like that. So what the first like a couple of stretch goals that you're gonna hit here over on Backer Kit, what do we have to look forward to as far as that?
Yeah, so I'm going to forget the exact order they're in, but at a certain amount, Johan's going to do us a GM screen. That's going to be really cool. We've kind of earmarked the piece of art for that. We'll show it off at some point. But I don't like talking about stretch goals too much before we fund it, because it feels feels presumptive. But we've also got the Cold War adventure I was talking about earlier. We're going to be partnering up with Josh Clark as the artist on that again, returning from Orbital Blues to make a bunch of like Cold War inspired spy art for us and kind of covering all the different stuff from that medium. We're then going to be working with Helena Real, Cillian L, Laurie O'Connell, and Wendy Yu, all of which are like fantastic, cool RPG writers who are going to make us something very cool. At one point, Elliot Davis is coming back following the success of Orbital Blues The Wanderer to write a solo version for us that is called The Morning After. And that should be pretty slick. And there's a couple of other bits like printing things. The one I really want to get is like end paper marbling for the book that will have like swirly blood patterns upon the edge of the book. But that one's a little bit far off. I'm not too confident about that, but I'd love to hit it.
Yeah, that would be absolutely gorgeous.
Sounds beautiful.
So what else would you like for those people that might have like looked at the page and been like, I like Sad Gay Vampires, but I haven't quite backed this yet? What could you say to those people to say, hey, this is a project that you want, this is the one that you need in your hands, and you should go back that right now?
Yeah, this is like, I feel like a lot of people that are going to be listening to this interview right now are going to be like, well, I've played Vampire the Requiem, I've played Vampire the Masquerade. I don't need to get involved with more vampire games. I have the vampire game I need, right? And I really think that those are great games. Like I've played a lot of Requiem and I've played a little bit of Masquerade, not as much as I'd like, but that's fine. My being all that. And I've really, the thing that I enjoyed about those games was like involving myself in like the melodrama of what that means and the sometimes like the power fantasies of that part of Undeath. Whereas this is a game that's not about power fantasies. This is a game about being fundamentally pathetic in an extremely human way. This is the RPG I've written that feels most about like the human experience and the emotional struggle and like the want of something that these characters have is like deeply fundamental. And it's so much fun to play and it's so much fun to GM as well, because like you don't need to do any prep to GM this game. You haven't got to make a quest or create a world or do anything fancy. You just set your players down in the city and let them loose upon it and then react to whatever they do wrong. And they will do things wrong because they are people and they are fundamentally very, very flawed people. And also they're playing vampires who act in that certain way. And it has been a game that, as I've run it, has been joyful, has been comedic, has been deeply tragic, has been about so many things can happen at the table when you sort of start taking the subtext of vampire fiction and starting to work out, well, what happens if we go to the ultimate endpoint of this metaphor? Where could we end up, right? And that is where we've landed on with this game, taken this idea of death, this idea of the change in state, this idea of what it means to be human, and advanced it to its complete thematic and emotional endpoint, and put it in an old role-playing game that is going to be in a beautiful book with gorgeous art presented by some of the finest creators in all of RPGs, and I am also there. And that is something. And it's like the thing I've written a lot of games now, and there's some stuff I'm really proud of. Like, and you guys have read it, you guys have enjoyed it. I'm very happy. The fact that people have been able to do that, to touch the work that we've made all together, and it's got my personal stamp on a lot of it. Inevitable was like a really high point for me because, like we talked about this earlier, that's a game I've been thinking about for like 6 years, and it's very much like who I was as a young man, right? And I'm very happy that that book now exists and other people can read it. But this is the game that is not about me as a young man. This game is about me as an adult, right? And a person who is not really much of a man anymore, but is also other things, and is very much about everything that it means to be human, and is a part of my endpoint specifically. And I don't think I will write a game that feels this emotionally vulnerable to me personally for a little while now. I think I have to go off in the woods and write something about dragons, I think, or Dark Souls or something. I don't know, right? But yeah, if you're familiar with my work, then hopefully the sound of what I just said excites you. But if not, yeah, the vampires are real sad and they're real gay, and they have a hell of a time trying not to feel the way they do inside. And I think that's kind of beautiful.
Yeah. I do too. I really am in love with your like emotional concept of this, and how much energy you've put into it, and how much like truth there is in this game about like a fictional creature that you can play.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing that I love about SoulMuppet, period, is you really latch on to emotions and infuse them throughout the entire game. Like a lot of games, you know, try to do that or do it well, but it seems to be like a central ethos of all your games. I mean, Best Left Buried is fear, you know, like Orbital Blues is sad, but it's very much like sad space cowboy, and the cowboy themes really go with the sadness. This is obviously sad as well, but that level of like when you can stretch that sadness across immortality, there's this level of like sad ennui mixed with those like bright spots of red savagery that just really come through, even just going through the Kickstarter. And you infuse it in so many different ways. Like you said, even going through like the gutters and how the blood continues to like spread as you go through the chapter. You do such an amazing job of infusing this incredibly deep level of emotion in the writing and in the systems and things that I think a lot of writers should really aspire to in their systems. And it's really beautiful to have and to read and to play.
Thanks. It means a lot. I'm very proud of it, and I'm going to keep saying that because I am.
You should be. You should be. I mean, I would be very happy if I had made a fraction of what you had accomplished making. So yeah. So these games like Sad Space Cowboys and Arthurian and Legends and Sad Gay Vampires, where can people find those games that currently exist now? And obviously we'll drop the link to the backer kit below, but where can they find those things now from you?
So I am Zach, or Jelly Muppet, present as such on many of the social medias. You can find all of our existing games on SoulMuppet-store.co.uk. If you search in SoulMuppet Publishing, you will get to. We'll find us. Backkit right now is the best place to come and show your enthusiasm for this game. There is a Discord that you can head to where there's people chatting constantly about Orbital Blues, Inevitable, and Paint the Town Red, and everything else. And yeah, there's lots of stuff coming out this month. If this game sounds interesting, then there is a load of actual plays going on at the moment for it. You could check out the My First Dungeon one, which is set in New York in the 20s, which is a stacked cast. And then Super Dylan of the One Shot Network has just released episode 1 of Paint the Town Red today. They're doing an adventure set in ancient Rome, and that's going to be real fancy. So I haven't actually managed to watch that one yet, but I'm looking forward to it. And then, yeah, we're all over the internet right now, and also on Blue Sky now that Twitter's exploded, which is so much fun. But yeah, I think that's everything I need to plug. Come say hey to us wherever you fancy.
And I will, as always, attempt to put the links below and all the things. But if you're listening and there's a link that we just talked about that I didn't put in there, just leave a comment and I'll do it. But I'll chat with Zach and SoulMuppet and try to make sure we get the Discord links, CAP links, and everything like that. So if you can't find something you're looking for, just leave a message and I will make sure to get that for you. But Zach, always a pleasure to talk to you. Always a pleasure to read your stuff. As long as we're doing this show, as long as you have stuff coming out, we'll be happy to talk to you and talk about it on the show. So very excited to get this one and actually get a chance to flip through it on screen. But thank you so much for being here. We genuinely appreciate every time we get a chance to talk to you.
Thank you so much, lads. It's been good to chat.
Yeah. So if you were listening, please go back the backer kit. You know, we're going to get Paint the Town Red, but I would love to get all of the extra stuff that Zach has envisioned. So again, we'll make sure that the link is below, and that is going to be our episode for today. So once again, thank you, and thank you for listening, everyone out there. Bye.
Yeah, thanks for listening. Speak to you soon.
Bye.